The mind, human mind, creates all experiences. All experiences we are having are being created by our mind. The creation of the experience and the experiencing of the experience takes place at the same time. So we don't see what the cause is, and we think experience is a real reality of life. All life is experience. If we don't have any experience, we have no life. Every moment of life is an experience. It's all being generated from within ourselves. And the mind is the generator of experience. And we have identified ourselves. Consciousness or the soul has identified itself with the mind to such an extent that when we are using the mind for thinking, we don't say we are using the mind for thinking, we say I am thinking. I has been totally put together with the mind and identified with it. So that is why we have become the mind. So we live our life as the mind. So we have given so much empowerment to the mind that when we want to leave the mind and go beyond it, the mind with our own power fights us and becomes our own enemy. And instead of letting us go any higher, say stay within that realm, because the mind's survival is dependent on being alive. And being alive with our power. The soul or consciousness empowers everything. It makes it alive. It makes the mind alive. It makes our sense perceptions alive. It makes our body alive. And it makes any experience that we are having also alive. So all the experiences being generated pass through this filter of the mind, senses, and the body. And then they look real taking place outside, and the whole world becomes real for us. And we live in this world as if we are very small specks. The world has been here forever, for billions of years. We just came right now for a short time, and then we'll go away. Little realizing that the world is created with us, the world dies with us. When a person is dying, he can't tell us what's happening, because he's dying and pulling his attention, and it's looking like everything is disappearing. It actually feels like everything is disappearing when you are dying. And then when it disappears, a new world opens up, similar and overlapping this. So you say, no, it's still there. But it's a little different world, and different laws of nature are applying there. And so then he realizes that the world has not ended, which is a little different. The other one ended, but this one is like that one. And so it keeps on happening right up to the causal plane, the mental plane. And the mind plays these tricks with us that no, the world is real in some form or the other. And so we get more and more attached to worldly things, and then we lose the ability to get out of it and go home back. When we want to fight the mind and say, no, you get apart, then the mind comes in and say, no, it argues with us. It's amazing how we can make our own mind take two sides. And we think we are one side and the mind is the other side, and we argue with each other. The reason for that is that all speaking is done by the mind. Supposing we as souls want to say something, we use the mind, even to ourselves. So when we are thinking, we are using the mind to become ourselves and a separate entity called the mind. And that's how we argue and say, no, we don't want to do this. But the mind itself is for its own survival, preventing us from going beyond. For that, one of the exercises that we do early on in meditation, and I am going to suggest that we do it today, is to be able to watch your mind as a separate thing than yourself. Most of us haven't had that experience because we have identified ourselves with the mind. Now, I want you to experience personally that the mind is merely a thinking machine. By an exercise we'll do today, in which I'll say, let the mind work randomly. You just become the listener, the spectator, just the onlooker, as if it is just a separate thing happening in front of you, and see how the mind behaves, how the mind works. First time you may realize that you are not the mind. You can actually observe the mind at work. Then that's a good starting point to handle the mind. That's a good starting point to say mind has this function, we have a different function. The bliss and joy that you talk of is not a function of the mind. It's only when we separate from the mind and we rise above the mind, that we get those experiences. And ultimately, it's not even an experience. Ultimately, the experiencer and the experience become one. And you don't know that you have to generate an experience, and that is mostly done through this almost hierarchical pattern of creation, that we cover ourselves in more forms, and those forms, one of them is mind. And that is how all experiences take place.